Well, hello, friends. Today we're in John chapter 11, and we're talking about Lazarus. Jesus, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. What a great story here in the Bible. Sorry, I've not been with you as much, maybe as I would like to have been. John is such an amazing book of the Bible, so much rich content, and just haven't really taken the time to spend it with you here. So we'll see. I think next year, my plan is to, well, I don't know if it's a plan or not, but my thought right now is to spend a lot of time in the Gospels, and so that may be more of the project for next year. But stay tuned on that. We'll see kind of what happens. For now, we are in John chapter 11 today. So much in John, and one of the things I mentioned in Luke is that I wanted to draw your attention towards some of the unique content in different gospels. So we looked at the road to Emmaus. It's only included in Luke's gospel. This story, Lazarus, excuse me, is only in John's gospel, which has really baffled some people in that, wow, the depth and significance of this story, but it's only in John. But that's another topic, another challenge for another day. This is fantastic. There's so much here. There's more here than we're going to have time to explore, of course, because we're just going to sort of hit some highlights of things that I want to highlight and that. So let me jump in and move quickly and then pause in a couple places, and we'll see where the journey takes us here today. John chapter 11. Now a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and his sister Martha. Right, so Mary, Martha, well known. There's some different incidences of Jesus' interaction with them that we know from other places, but today we're focused on this one event. What will become evident in this passage of scripture through what's communicated here is that Jesus has a special relationship with this family, with these siblings, with these two women and their brother Lazarus. The text says that very clearly. Jesus' emotion will show that, and it's a lovely thing to think about. Lazarus now lay sick, and so verse 3, the sister sent word to Jesus. This is interesting. Lord, the one you love is sick. Not just the first name. So you get an idea of the closeness of this relationship. And I want to wrestle with you for a minute about that, but I'm going to pause on it for a second. We'll see when other things come back around in this text. When Jesus heard this, verse 4, he said, "This sickness will not end in death. No, it is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it." So this situation isn't going to end in Lazarus' death. It's going to be a spiritual unveiling. People are going to see some things happen here because of this situation, and Jesus knows that, and he's very clear about that here, right? Now, verse 5. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Well, that's a whole verse. I've been really taking note recently. It's interesting that whoever later, this is much later, I forget the guy's name or the time frame and the years, but it's like in the medieval time period later that they put verse numbers throughout the Bible. And it's interesting when you have short verses, if the person that did that thought that, this was going to be kind of something that would be interesting to quote or to think about in its own kind of statement. So verse 5 in John chapter 11 is just the statement. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So this is interesting. And I guess this is kind of the thing that I'm just thinking about a little bit that's fascinating is, so God is love. John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he sent his one and only son. So we have this idea really, I think throughout scripture, this idea that something can be true in a broad sense and also true in a specific sense. For example, take the idea of God's presence We oftentimes use the big word omnipresence, meaning God is everywhere. And remember, we saw like the idea in when Solomon built the temple, the idea that this building cannot hold God in, right? That God is the Lord of heaven and earth, of all creation, is the scope of God's God's presence. It fills the creation, and yet at the same time, God's presence can be uniquely manifest in the tabernacle, in the temple, in Jesus in the incarnation, right? In his people from Pentecost forward, right? So these things can be true at once. God can love the world. At the same time, there can be a unique affection, a unique bond, a unique relationship, like Jesus has with his disciples, he has with these three. So there's a unique, a special, a deep, connected relationship between not just Martha or Mary or Lazarus, but just them and Jesus just have this bond, and it's lovely, I think, right? So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was 2 more days. And then he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. The disciples, and again, I'm moving fast through some things and slowing down on others. The disciples are concerned about the animosity towards Jesus in them from some people, and they're kind of wanting to steer clear of that. And so that's a bit of a challenge there. They say, verse 8, but Rabbi, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and now you're going back? Okay. So interesting. So Jesus, unsurprisingly, is unafraid of them in that situation, right? So verse 11, after he had said this, he went on to tell them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep. Our friend, not just my friend, our friend. There's connectivity there, right? Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to wake him up. Disciples shouldn't be a big surprise. Don't understand exactly what Jesus is talking about. Verse 17, they reply, Lord, if he sleeps, he'll get better, right? When we get a flu, get cold, whatever, you're not feeling well, what should you do? Sleep, rest, stay in bed, let your body recover. So if he's sick, they say, let him rest, don't wake him up. That's not nice. Jesus, of course, he's not talking about that. So I love this, verse 14. So then he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. Okay. Forget this language of, whatever. He's dead. All right, guys. That's how it is. And for your sake, I am glad that I was not there. Ooh, this is interesting because we're going to see in a minute this statement to Jesus. If you were there, this wouldn't have happened. Jesus says, I'm glad I wasn't there. Okay. This is getting juicy. What's going on here? So we'll see as this goes on. So that you may believe. Okay. So again, something's going to happen. There's going to be a revelation and uncovering. They're going to see something go on here. Not just everybody, but even Jesus's disciples. He wants them to see something that's profound and powerful. So then Thomas is so funny. Verse 16 said to the rest of the disciples, let us also go so that we may die with him. So he's not at least changing confidence that they're not going to die, but he's just like, you know what? All right. Jesus wants to go die. Let's go die with him. Let's go. I love it. Fun stuff. Verse 17, on his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. So he's dead. There's no CPR. There's no defibrillator. It's 4 days. It's a long time. Right. And he's in the tomb. Jewish practice, there was not like we do it, whereas a period of a few days or whatever, they had a custom where you get buried, you get in the ground, and there's a time frame that has to happen in. So their people are coming, they're gathering together, they're mourning. Verse 20, when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed home. Lord, I'm in verse 21, still John 11. Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So what does she think about Jesus's power? She believes, it seems to me, that Jesus has the power to prevent death. He has the power to heal, right? That he could have prevented this illness from leading to death. She believes Jesus could have done that if he had been there. If he had been there. Remember the one centurion who told Jesus that he didn't have to come; he could heal his daughter, I think, right from a distance. Was a daughter or servant? I don't remember now. But anyway, heal from a distance. But anyway, this is the story we're in right now. So, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. I believe that, she kind of says, right? But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. Ooh, that's interesting. That's interesting. All right, verse 23. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. Now, I want to talk about this for a minute because, again, one of the things that I've been doing is talking about hope. Hope for life after death. And we've kind of moved throughout the Bible from not that much of a robust hope for much, really a focus on living this life well and faithfully throughout a lot of the Old Testament. But as time went on, we see glimpses in the book of Daniel. We see some more substance. And now there's this robust hope of resurrection. We'll see that right here. That's very much understood and embraced on some level, at least at this point, amongst God's people. Your brother will rise again. Martha answered. So here's what I'm talking about here. Verse 24. Martha answered, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection at the last day. This is where I have. Do I still have it up here? Let me look at my thing. No, I don't have it anymore. That my little graphic. Anyway, so the what they believed was that there was going to be this day of God's coming, his kingdom come, and resurrection, where God's people would be raised from the dead, kind of this Ezekiel dry bones coming back to life, maybe sort of thing. So that was the biggest part of the hope, was resurrection at God's coming and the last day, she said. There was less of a robust view of what happened in between death now and resurrection. What I've tried to say to you, that I think the Bible through and through, front to back, that the primary hope is resurrection, bodily resurrection, the whole deal. And what we're seeing here, and I think there's clues in here as well too, and we see more, of course, robust in the New Testament, without a lot of detail, but about the fact that when we die in Christ, that we're safe and secure in him. Right? Paul says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord, and then still looking forward to resurrection. So anyway, Jesus is going to challenge. He doesn't say, no, that's totally wrong, but he says, I'm going to do something more than that. I'm going to do something different than that. And really, again, what Jesus says to his disciples is what it's really about is a revelation or an understanding of who Jesus is and the power that he has, right? So Martha says, I know at the last day he's going to be resurrected. I believe that. I'm a good Jewish girl, believe that. Jesus said to her, verse 25, I am the resurrection and the life. This is one of the I ams, right? And that's John's gospel so well known for. She says, I know he's going to be raised. Like Jesus says, I am the resurrection. Wow. That's power. Powerful power statement there. That I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. So I think that's probably a clue into this understanding of, absent from the body, present with the Lord, whatever it means. What we typically call heaven, or the Bible sometimes called paradise, but the idea of being with him even in death, but then ultimately that resurrection hope, of course, right? So yeah, it just a lot there, a lot of depth to sort of think about. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? There's a lot to unpack in there, but I think the major hope is that when we're trusting in Jesus, there's a lot all good ahead for us. Okay, a lot there, a lot there. So verse 27. Yes, Lord, she replied, I believe that you are the Messiah. Remember that, the anointed one, the promised coming king that would have all this authority, the Son of God who was to come into this world. After she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary aside. The teacher is here, she said, and he is asking for you. When Mary heard this, she got up quickly and went to him. Now, Jesus had not entered the village yet, but he was outside where Martha had met with him. This is interesting. I'm just sort of thinking about this in fresher ways now, that it seems like Jesus really wanted to also have this moment with Mary to connect with her before they got to the crowds and all that. So this is really interesting stuff to think about. So the people noticed how quickly she went out, and they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to mourn there. When Mary reached a place where Jesus was, she saw him. She fell at his feet and said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. So she's falling at his feet. She's, what's her emotion? How would you describe it? I don't think she's angry. She could be angry, but I don't think she's angry. I think she's disappointed, distraught, just feeling like it could have been different. Jesus, if only you had been here, this would be different. The situation, my brother would not have died. Verse 33. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping. Remember, so Jesus calls her out of the crowd, but the crowd goes with her. So interesting. Any case, when he sees this, I love this. Look at this. He was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Jesus. Oh, let me read a little bit more, and then I'll make this comment. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Ooh, come and see. Isn't that what I'm trying to mind? That just popped for me. Isn't that what Jesus said to those inquiring about him way at the beginning of John's gospel? When they said, where are you staying? Did he say come and see? I don't remember. I'm gonna have to flip back there and look later. So interesting stuff. So, all right. Then the 2-word in English verse 35, Jesus wept. Okay. So Jesus, is this Jesus in his humanity? Is this Jesus in his divinity? Is this Jesus, right? Could it be that God himself is moved by our pain and our suffering? Some people don't like that idea. They like to think of God as being unmoved or unaffected by us. Something worth thinking about. But in any case, Jesus in this moment is deeply moved. He's troubled, and he wept. Right. And all the more I mean, you've probably heard this if you heard anybody preach or teach this passage of scripture before. The fascinating thing is that Jesus wept fully knowing what he was about to do with Lazarus. That is so fascinating. And I think it gives us permission that to weep, to lament, to be overwhelmed by pain and loss and hurt and hardship in this life is not in opposition to a robust hope. It's not the opposite of that's despair. Despair is this emotion, this lament, this hurt, this pain with no hope. But even knowing the good that's coming, even fully believing that God is going to reconcile things, that God's going to wipe away these tears one day, Revelation 21:22, right? It's still appropriate, I think, for us alongside of Jesus to weep and to feel the hurt and the pain in this world and its brokenness, and the reality that right now it's still not as it ought to be. Remember, death and destruction are not, pain and loss and hurt are not part of creation intent. They're part of this fallen world that's being renewed. God's kingdom is breaking in, but it's not yet. Death is still a painful reality around us, and there's nothing wrong with weeping in the midst of that pain, weeping with those who weep. We can do that with hope. And that's what Paul and other places talks about as well, right? So I think it's important stuff. So look, this is really interesting too. I'm almost done. Verse 36. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. They've taken note of Jesus' emotion, and they've said, wow, this rabbi, this teacher is not, above being caught up in the reality of the moment. And they don't, at least these folks here, they don't despise him for that. They don't look down on him for that. They say, wow, he loved this guy, right? It's cool. It's good stuff. But some of them said, who could not he who opened the eyes of the blind have kept this man from dying? So they're questioning his power. Some others, right? And there's always a mixed group of people, always mixed response to things, right? In such situations. All right, let me move there. Verse 38. Jesus once more deeply moved. I love this. I know there's a Greek word behind this. I just forget what it is offhand. I'll maybe circle back around to it. Again, none of these read through the Bible things are about me doing research and then coming back with a sort of planned out thing. I'm just reading the text as we kind of come to it in our study. Jesus, once again deeply moved, came to the tomb. It was the cave with a stone laid across the entrance. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for he has been there for 4 days. I know the King James has a fun word, so look up that if you want to sometime. So we have this, this constant, even with disciples, even with those who get it the most, they're thinking in very practical, regular terms of how things would happen. And, disagreements with Jesus rarely end up with him being wrong, do they? In that situation, we're best off trusting and then seeing what he's going to do in these situations. Then, verse 40, Jesus said, "Did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" Oh my goodness, I'm getting emotional with this myself here. Remember, Jesus told his disciples that this is going to be this moment isn't just going to be a healing. It's not even just going to be somebody dead brought back to life, even though that is huge, of course, right? This is going to be a moment to further see who Jesus is. It's such a moment to see who Jesus is, to see his heart, to see his compassion, to see his care, and also to see his power. Oh, it's so good. So good. Verse 41. I'm almost done. So they took away the stone. Then Jesus looked up and said, "Father, I thank you that you have heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I said this for the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me." right? So he's wanting really an authentication of who he is and his deep connection to the Father, right? And their shared relational power. When he had said this, verse 43, Jesus called in a loud voice. This is no secret. Lazarus, come out. Verse 44. I love how the language is here. The dead man came out. Think about that for a second. The dead man came out. The dead, what is, he's not a zombie, right? But there's an acknowledgement here that he was dead. The dead man came out with his hands and his feet wrapped in strips of linen, his burial cloths, right? And a cloth around his face. So this is no bait and switch. This is not a different person. Somebody's, back way, sneaking in, sneaking out. This is Lazarus. He was dead. He was anointed. He was wrapped. He was placed in the tomb to, like everybody else was, for his body to deteriorate and then his bones to be collected and put in an ossuary, bone box, like they did. That's what they did. He comes out and he still has the cloths on. And Jesus said to them, in a way, it's sort of, maybe his statement sort of feels anticlimactic, but it's so interesting. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Take off the grave clothes and let him go. Powerful stuff. Now, what is this? This is not resurrection like Jesus and what we're promised in the future, because when we're resurrected, we will never die again. Assumedly, Lazarus died at some point later in life, but he was brought back to life from death, resuscitated. It's probably too weak of a word, but by God's power, right? And they saw a bit of what Jesus could do. All right, I'm going to end there. What are your thoughts, questions, comments? Yeah, it's such a powerful passage. Tracy, I agree with you there very, very much. So if you guys have any questions or thoughts or things that you connections and things that you see here, feel free to leave comments or thoughts. Love to hear them. And I'll see you again soon. Bye.